Yo, BK, what's going on, Brandon?
What's up, PA? Great to talk to you, as always.
You too, man. Welcome to the Friday Football Feast. Paul Charchian, Brandon Krisztal, at BK Denver Sports. Clearly, you're at KOA right now in Denver, right? Because the
sound is great.
Well, the connection is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I am just using modern technology, a great Comrex access in, I would like to say my office, but my wife's office is actually quieter than mine. Mine looks better on TV, but hers is quieter, and the Ethernet line's right here. So it's almost like I'm at KOA.
That's it's beautiful that you took time to join, and welcome back from Orlando and the owners meetings. What it's one of the many great things that I appreciate about you and your work ethic is, when you're at the owners' meetings, you're not just going to be huddled up next to the Sean Payton. You go table to table to table and talk to a bunch of coaches. You get really good steam. So from the owners' meetings, what do you got?
Well, it's funny because my favorite thing about this, and we kind of talked about it last week a little, or at least I think we did, is when a team works a player out, they say, oh, well, they must love him. Oh, private workout. And, Sean Payton volunteered that the day after J.J. McCarthy's pro day, he had a private workout. He and Davis Webb, the quarterback's coach, and I'm not sure who else was there from the Broncos, and they gave him a whole bunch of stuff the night before and all that. And I don't know if they took him to dinner, but, there's that whole thing. Oh, they took a guy to dinner. These teams take all the potential prospects to dinner, and sometimes they take guys that they know they're not going to draft just to maybe create a smoke screen. And so I'm not saying that the Broncos don't love J.J. McCarthy. I'm not saying the Vikings don't, or Drake May, or Jaden Daniels, or whomever. But it's one of those things where just because you take someone on a date doesn't mean you're going to marry them, right? And so, but the conversation certainly around the Broncos, who are picking 12, the Vikings at 11, and the Raiders at 13, is that they all feel like candidates to trade up to go get the quarterback that they want to fall in love with or that they target. And I got this too, talking to people with all three organizations at the highest of levels, is that they understand the teams around them are doing that as well. And so even if there's a guy they love, they know that despite the ammunition they might have, a different team may like what they have to offer in the trade market. So,
Brandon, does your fan base feel like ours does here, that there's a trade coming? I mean, your quarterbacks right now are Ben DiNucci and Jarrett Stidham, right? So, and our situation is frankly not that different. So our fan base just believes that it's almost an inevitability this team's going to go trade up and get quarterback of the future. Does your fan base feel similarly?
I think it's tricky, right? Because they want that young quarterback to cheer for. That is something PA and I talked about last week. It's like, yeah, Teddy came along, you had Dante, but you just haven't had too many rookie quarterbacks. And for the Broncos' rich history, they were lucky enough to acquire John Elway's rookie year and then get Peyton Manning for 4, Jake the Snake as a vet. They draft him Tebow. We know how that went. Mm-hmm. Paxton Lynch, much worse. Yep. And Jay Cutler traded away after year 3 and didn't turn into a Hall of Famer, so no one's losing sleep around here. But most teams want their guy, and most franchises don't have them, right? Mm-hmm. They're truly their guy. The Broncos were lucky to have Elway for 16 years, and we know the folks in Kansas City are lucky, but we can name all those guys. So they want that guy, but there's plenty of people that are on both sides of the line of, if you have to go up to get in front of the Vikings, and I know this talking to folks with the Vikings who are pleased that they have 11 and 23 to move up. Well, there might be a player you like at 23, but if the Broncos decide they want to go up higher than the Vikings potentially, they can throw Pat Surtain in there, and they don't want to do that by any means. But you're throwing in maybe the best cornerback in football, or a guy that's on the very short list, 1, 2, or 3. And so there's Broncos fans that don't mind seeing Pat Surtain in the trade.
Wow.
And I don't want to say that I don't mind it, because I certainly do. He's a lockdown corner and maybe trending towards a gold jacket. That's a little early after 3 years, but 2 All-Pros, 2 Pro Bowls,
yeah,
all of that.
It looks good.
But yeah, it certainly looks good. So do you want to trade away more assets, plus you assume all 3 number ones, right, this year, next year, the year after, and Pat Surtain to jump in front of the Vikings? Well, I would just argue that if J.J. McCarthy is the next John Elway, if Drake May, if even Bo Nix, if you have to go up to get him, and odds are you don't have to go up that high to get Bo Nix, so you're probably not putting Surtain if you're trading to 8 with Atlanta. But if you're trying to get to 3 or 4, or even 5 or 6, and I know there's no way you're putting Pat Surtain in to trade to the Chargers, I wouldn't think. But, and they're obviously sitting at 5 for now. But I think there's plenty of fans that say, at all, by any means necessary, if we do have that guy. But then, of course, we know the hit rate on quarterbacks isn't as successful as I think most fan bases would like.
Yeah, especially once you get out of the first handful of picks. Talk to me about George Paton's status there. He was a longtime Vikings executive. PA knew him. I knew him. We both like George a lot. We've been rooting for his success. but it feels like it's been a mixed bag, and then you add in everything that went down with Russell Wilson last year. Where does this fan base stand with general manager George Paton right now?
There's plenty that think he should be fired for just doing the Russ deal. And George last week at the owners' meetings, or this week rather, it's only Friday, all these days run together, or a couple days ago, he said that was on him. And he's right. He goes, but a lot of people would have done that deal. And that's where he's the most right, is I can't swear 31 other GMs that weren't with Seattle would have done that deal, but most of them would have at that point. Guys coming off 9 Pro Bowls and 8 playoff appearances, threw almost 300 touchdowns. We saw plenty of good stuff from Russell Wilson. Maybe we just didn't understand all that went into it and how much Pete Carroll and that staff really helped Russ along, and how beneficial a good defense and a good running game and then letting Russ work magic late really helped. But so that's the biggest stain on George's resume.
For sure.
And then sort of was he thrown under the bus by Sean Payton on the contact with the agent? How did that go down? Did Russ make it worse by saying, yeah, they called my agent versus, yeah, I let my agent deal with that. I'm not going to get into all that. Probably so, but that kind of, that's understandable when you're, I guess, being broken up with, that you're going to tell your side of the story. But George has been really good in the draft. I mentioned Pat Surtain. That was his first round draft pick. It looks like he may have been right on Justin Fields and Mac Jones and not grabbing one of those guys, but getting Surtain at 9. And Javonte Williams he traded up for, but then in the 3rd round, he's gotten some really talented players. Quinn Meinerz is going to maybe be the highest paid guard in football when they decide to give him money. And that was a 3rd round pick out of Wisconsin Whitewater. Baron Browning looks the part when he's healthy. He is a real deal pass rusher. Nick Bonito, who George took in the 2nd round last year, that was their first pick, or 2 years ago. He got to the quarterback plenty. Jonathan Cooper in the 7th round out of Ohio State led the team in sacks. And so he's shown that really rounds 3 through 7 is where his bread is buttered. And that's a lot of times the meat of your team, even though you need to hit on those guys at the top and they haven't necessarily missed. So I think it's one of those things where you're going to hold the Russ thing against him, but I think he is the perfect GM for, as PA, of course, calls him, the anti-Vike. Sean Payton wants to be out in front of the camera. He wants everything to be coming out of his mouth on behalf of the organization. George is fine if he never talks to us on the record, or really at all. Yeah. He wants to talk to his friends. He wants to talk to folks around the league and talks to agents and watch film. He is a scout through and through, which is why he's at Drake May's Pro Day, or why he's been at Drake May's Pro Day, and it was at Jaden Daniels as well this week after the owners' meetings.
Talk to me about George Payton's decision to release all-pro safety Justin Simmons. Already, he went to the Pro Bowl last year, and it felt like he was going to be a Bronco for life, I think, for a lot of people. Leads the NFL in interceptions since 2016 and got released outright, which seems shocking to me.
Yeah, I think it was kind of multi-layered. For as great as Justin was on the field, and you mentioned the accolades right now, multiple Pro Bowls and all pros, and the interceptions. And he was even better off the field. 3-time Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. If he'd gotten nominated now after having all those Pro Bowls, he's the kind of guy that wins, right? Because we know it's big name guys who win that award, unless he raised $30 million like J.J. Watt, who's also obviously a big name guy. But that's quantifiable. Otherwise, it's hard to quantify charity. But Justin was great in the community and great on the field and calmed things down. But you saw the safety market reset. And he was going to cost him $18 million against the cap this year. And with Russell leaving, that's something Sean said on Monday at the coaches' breakfast. He said, well, that's, a result of having to take the dead money on Russ. And I think that's an easy excuse, but I think that there are times where, as good as Justin's been, and I think he's still hoping to get a bigger deal out there. Otherwise, I think he'll sign with a playoff team at some point, but he's still asking for top of the market money at that position, whatever's left, being for the handful of guys that are still being paid. And so that's why he hasn't gotten a job yet. But I think that they saw some glimpses of either decline or questionable effort. And I've been told by multiple people in the organization, go flip on that Patriots game on Christmas Eve, where he's got a chance to make the playoffs for the first time in his career if they win that game and stay alive. And apparently there were some plays in there that leave a lot to be desired. And so I'm not trying to besmirch him. I'm just telling you what I've heard, and I haven't gone back and rewatched that game. I got to live it in real time on the field helping out Westwood once. So it was a head scratcher, and it always hurts when you lose guys that have been the face of their franchise. But I think it's also kind of just there's somebody that said they're trying to get as many people that have been associated with the losing out of the building. And that's not to call Justin Simmons, a loser or to say that he's the reason. But for 8 years that he's been here, they've missed the playoffs all 8 years. He came in right after Super Bowl 50, and he's never played in the postseason.
Brandon Krisztal, anchor and reporter for sister station KOA in Denver and Colorado, at BK Denver Sports via Twitter if you'd like to follow.
We were talking about getting the bad apples out. That brings us directly to Jerry Jeudy, right? So he wore out his welcome. He got in the doghouse with Sean Payton. Eventually got traded, and by the way, got paid by his new team. I got to believe that wide receiver starts to creep up as a draft need. But also talk to me about Jerry Jeudy, who was a former second-round pick, that ultimately the team decided to get rid of.
No, he went 15th. He went only behind his teammate, Henry Ruggs, in that 2020 COVID draft. And coming in, he was my favorite receiver in the draft. I did not like Justin Jefferson. I just liked Jamar Chase more. And I heard that, folks really liked Brandon Ayuk, and Kyle Shanahan, obviously sung his praises and went and got him. Jalen Reagor, there were question marks on. CeeDee Lamb, I was high on too. And you just didn't know how it'd shake out. Jerry, I don't know how sideways he was with Sean as much as it was more just his approach to everything in the organization. And so he's a smart football player. He was frustrated because almost from the get-go, when he'd be open, the ball didn't come his way. He had a stretch, though, and this is why he got paid. Last year in the final 5 or 6 games in 2022 when Cortland Sutton was out, and he was lined up in that primary receiver spot where he's going to be alone on a side oftentimes, he thrived and looked like a guy that could have been a Pro Bowler and basically had, I think, 500 or 600 yards over those 6 games. It was a big production. That's where he found all 4 touchdowns last season. So he thought, 4.5 touchdowns would be easy. But there were so many times, and this kind of goes back to why things didn't work with Russell Wilson and Sean Payton's offense, where guys are running open, and Jerry Jeudy's one of them. Now, there's also times where the ball hits him in the hands, or he doesn't get his toes down in the end zone on national television. And you say, okay, well, is this guy just a total draft bust? Obviously, the Browns saw something. Had the Broncos traded him at the draft, it's my understanding, or at the deadline rather, it's my understanding that the Packers might have offered a 3rd and a 5th. Instead, they get a 5th and a 6th. But that's how it goes this time of year. So with Jerry, it's one, he was kind of just ready for a new situation. He told us right before the deadline, literally the day before, we're standing at his locker, and he's like, or a couple days before, he said, well, if I'm here after the deadline, great. If I'm not, no big deal. I've been hearing this for 2 years. Yeah. So he was aware of it and didn't mind the idea of a new start. I do know this. He's a big fan of Justin Jefferson because we had that wide receiver conversation about all these young guys, and I don't know if I really included him in it or not, but maybe I took him out of it. He has Justin Jefferson at the top of the list of all his favorite receivers in the league.
Yeah, well, get in line.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's good. You should like Justin Jefferson. He's really good. I don't think that's really going out on a limb or anything.
No. But, if you want to throw that up there, him, Jamar Chase, and go through the other couple young receivers, CeeDee Lamb, the guys that we mentioned and guys around them, and, in the age-wise, he likes JJ the most.
BK, when chatting privately with coaches, personnel people, or whatever, did you leave the owners' meetings with an opinion about the rookie quarterbacks that is different from, say, like when we chatted around the combine?
I just think that this is the time of year that they're really talking themselves into it. And this feels like similar to that 2018 draft class where lots of teams would be happy with with any of them or with more than one of them, right? We heard people, some liked Darnold more, some liked Allen's upside, some liked Baker Mayfield's makeup. Folks were scared of Lamar Jackson. Looks like all 31 teams kind of missed on Lamar, although we'd love to see him actually do it in the postseason. But he does have 2 MVPs to show for his efforts to this point, and those are hard to come by. And so, obviously Josh Rosen was highly thought of. So it reminds me of that, where lots of people can talk themselves into it. But as I touched on before, they get this wrong more than they get it right. And I think I even brought it up to you last week, PA, that since the merger in 1970, there's 7 quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame right now that are first rounders with a gold jacket. So it's not that easy to do. And I think something like 40 Pro Bowlers since 2000 are first round quarterbacks. I heard that number the other day. I need to double check that, but I don't know why I would make that up. Not that I can't make stuff up. And so I think there's a lot of teams that like these guys, but again, my favorite thing is like, the Raiders really like Jaden Daniels. Well, do they? I don't know. I'm not saying they don't. They want to figure out a way to get to 2. The Patriots do really like Drake May, but they would trade back. I mean, Robert Kraft said we're open for business the other day in Orlando because he knows his team needs a lot of help, and drafting Drake May 3rd and getting him killed, or whomever, JJ McCarthy 3rd, whatever, getting him killed isn't going to help versus trading down. Maybe they draft Bo Nix. Maybe they trade with the Broncos or the Vikings, but get some more premium picks and help build this team up there in New England. So I think that the sense I get is lots of people like these quarterbacks. I know that the Broncos, their takeaway from what I got talking to people, more, I guess, off the record than on the record, is that they liked what they saw in McCarthy. I know that the Vikings have a private workout scheduled with him where they're going to go up to Ann Arbor, as well as I think they've got a couple more, but I talked to, like I mentioned, some folks very high up at the Vikings, and so that's on their agenda as well. And so you can, again, fall in love with these people, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to actually get them.
We're talking to Brandon Krisztal, Denver, KOA. Broncos pick 12, Vikings are 11. They both need quarterbacks. These teams are very closely linked through this draft process. If Broncos hold at 12, what positions or players do you think are candidates for the Broncos at 12?
Well, it's tricky, but I think if you just want to go positions, you could say left tackle. Let's say there's one that they really like there. They've got Mike McGlinchey locked up for 4 more years and $60 million or whatever that number is, which is a lot for a guy that isn't the best pass blocker. And I'm being nice. A great guy, team captain, face of the O-line, but it was obvious that he needed a little bit of help in the pass blocking area, which is not great. Garrett Bowles is in the final year of his deal. So if you drafted somebody there, you could just straight up cut Garrett Bowles on draft night, but I don't think they're in a hurry to do that. A lot of people think that they might like Brock Bowers because he could fit into that joker role, which is what Sean Payton refers to, whether it's Alvin Kamara or Reggie Bush or Jimmy Graham, but guys that kind of move all over the field and are the difference maker. Maybe Taysom Hill was that again. I don't know if he's called Taysom Hill the Joker, but that Brock Bowers at 12. But I would argue, just like the Patriots at 3, if you're sitting there at 12 and you're just going to take a tight end specifically or whatever he is, a weapon, versus trading down to 15 or 16 and getting a couple more premium picks, because they don't have a second rounder this year, and so they have their third rounder. But if you could pick up another second and third rounder or whatever you're picking up and slide back a couple spots in the draft, that makes more sense than sitting at 12 or sitting at 12 and taking Bo Nix, saying, oh, we liked him enough and he was there at 12. Even if you like Bo Nix, and let's say that the Vikes didn't move up and they end up drafting just a different position, you at least trade to 11 to get Bo, right? Like, you want to make your fan base think that you like the guy enough that you didn't want anybody else to jump you. You didn't think he'd be there at 10 or 11, but here we are. And so I think that O-line and weapon make the most sense in terms of what's available in this draft. I guess if one of those top line receivers were there, because if quarterbacks, let's say they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the Broncos aren't one of those teams, well, that's going to create really exciting opportunities for teams 6 through 12, which means a lot more teams may be looking to move to those spots as well. But I think it kind of opens up the draft board differently if you skip the top 5 quarterbacks. And I guess in that scenario, Bo Nix is getting into the top 5, or I guess Michael Penix Jr. And so I think the Broncos have a lot of directions they could go, but everybody around here hopes that they are in the trade market because they want to go buy a jersey of a rookie quarterback and hope that he's the guy for 10 years.
Your Nuggets are 6.5-point favorites over our Timberwolves tonight. What do you think of the game?
Well, I know that the Nuggets have been really good coming out of the break, except against the Suns, where they've dropped not 1 but 2 games here just this month, but they've only lost 3 times since the All-Star break. Jamal Murray is, I think, still questionable with the knee kind of leg issue. It looked like he rolled his ankle, and I saw it. They're calling it a knee. It's hurting my fantasy championship right now, but that's a different conversation. I haven't looked to see who. Do we know who all is playing for Minnesota? Because the Nuggets don't lose very often at home, again, except
all of them.
So they're all playing?
Well, no Cat, but all of them.
Yeah, everybody else. Well, so that certainly makes it more challenging, but it also makes me think that Jamal Murray will find a way to play.
Mm-hmm.
The Nuggets have shown, and they showed it even in the game where it was just the Anthony Edwards show a couple weeks ago, that when they need to turn it on, they did it in L.A. on the nationally televised game a couple Saturdays ago. They have a gear that they can get to. Now, you don't want to fall too far behind against good teams, and Minnesota's certainly proven to be a good team, and I'm excited for the fan base there. I'm excited for Tim Conley, who obviously helped build this Nuggets franchise into what it is in so many ways. And so and they gave the Nuggets the most fits of all the teams in the playoffs. So I expect it to be a close game. I know this. If I do decide to throw any money down, and I'm not sure how inspired I am, I'd bet on Minnesota to cover at the very least. I don't know if they're going to come in here and win, because there are going to be plenty of Nuggets fans on a Friday night fired up to see their team get after it against their division rival, I guess, for, lack of a better term, but I think that's the best way to call it. So I think it'll be a fun game, but I still see it, I have a hard time picking against the Nuggets, even though these teams are, 1 game apart record-wise.
Yeah, they're half a game apart. So do you guys know the tiebreaker scenario well enough? I mean, could this game have tiebreaker implications if the Wolves beat the Nuggets and move into the number one. Maybe later they end up tied. Do you guys?
Well, they play again in 2 weeks. So now the Nuggets are they 1-1 or 2-0?
It's 1-1.
1-1. So at this point it becomes huge because whichever team wins it gets that momentum, and then the game April 10th in Minneapolis.
Huge.
It's here. Here? Yeah, it's here. So you get another game here. Yeah, so that's huge momentum. So if the Nuggets figure out a way to win that, the one thing I get from the Nuggets, and you heard LeBron kind of say this the other day too, but Joker said this, that he wants to be playing the right way. He doesn't care about their seeding. I think the health matters the most, which is why they're kind of leaning on the cautious side with Jamal. They've sat AG, Aaron Gordon a little bit. MPJ has been lights out since coming back from the break, so they haven't had to worry about his health, but KCP has been just a little nicked up. So I think they'd be okay at 2 or 3 if it meant that everyone was healthy going into the postseason. You talk about the owners' meetings. Well, one thing is Josh Kroenke's rolling around there hanging out with his dad Stan, but Josh runs the Nuggets and the Avalanche. And so talking to Josh about the idea that both the Nugs and the Avs could make a deep run together, right? The last 2 years you've had a champion, but the other team got bounced in the first round. So it's made Ball Arena quiet on those other nights versus the idea that every night the conversion crew is busting their what to get the ice and court switched over. And so I said, so do you throw a joint parade? He's like, hey, let's calm down now. But, because I said, if you guys are healthy, you can make a deep run. And he's like, you hit it right on the head. If we're healthy, we like our chances. I mean, they have right now arguably the best hockey player in the world and the best basketball player in the world. So they're in pretty good shape. And it should be fun, but it is really, I know it's fun for you guys, having seen plenty of lean years in Minnesota, to see what this team is doing, especially in the emergence of Anthony Edwards.
And finally, a minute, BK, you get it all. I assume that there is at least a chance April 11th, we will see you in the capital city of St. Paul, right? I mean, because if the Denver Pioneers beat Cornell after that double OT victory over UMass, and if the Golden Gophers can sneak by Boston University tomorrow, well, that means Pioneers and Gophers at XL Energy Center for the Frozen Four, April 11th in St. Paul. Any chance you come?
I suppose there's always a chance something happens. If I was getting on a plane that weekend, I'd like to think I was heading to Augusta. But and also it's going to be a home game for the Gophers, right? Everyone's going to make the short drive to St. Paul.
I know.
DU, like they have been most years, is really good, and they obviously got that huge win, 46 saves from Matt Davis, their goalie, and so you like their chances. But man, if the Gophers get in, that's and I know we probably had Frozen Fours near these home teams' campuses, but God, that would be a huge advantage for them. So, but I doubt I make it for the Pies. I just don't know if we have the budget right now.
Happy Easter, my brother, to you and your family, and I'll see you out there soon, okay?
Thank you. It's actually my birthday, so I'm going to be more focused on that. And
happy birthday, bud.
Look, I'm Jewish, but my wife is not, and we do go to Easter service most year, kind of the least Jewish holiday of all of them. And I was like, do you want to go? She's like, it's your birthday. I go, if you want to go, we'll take the kiddos.
Okay.
Do some Easter egg hunts. So, but yeah, happy Easter to you and yours as well. Great talking to both you guys as always.
Good job, man, as usual. Later. Brandon Krisztal at BK Denver Sports. He's smart. He's confident on the microphone, and we enjoy his inclusion 9 to noon. Back after this.
Welcome back, Friday Football Feast. Final segment. We will wrap with...
We still have another segment after this, Chuck.
We have another one in?
Yeah, you've been
Holy cow.
You've been on vacation for
the
too
clock
long.
management has not been very good.
It's not great.
That is not my fault.
The program director's in Nebraska, so as long as he's not listening, he has no idea, cat's away, that kind of thing,
Omaha's a pretty good destination, by the way.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
You've heard Guardsy talking. The craft beer scene is unbelievable down in Omaha.
Yes.
It's a cool place to go, despite being in the middle of the cornfields. Charch, you've been gone, and we have had so many quarterback-related conversations from the Vikings' point of view. And I wanted to hit you with a piece of audio that I heard, speaking, Brian Kelly talking about Jaden Daniels going to Washington at number 2.
Yep.
And I think the context of that, I think he was specifically asked. I think there was he was kind of led into that a little bit, but all the same, that's where a lot of people have put Jaden Daniels is number 2 to the Commanders.
Yes.
Dan Quinn this week, I think it was during the owners' meetings, had this to say about said second overall draft pick. Here's the head coach of the Commanders.
If somebody thinks they know, you'll have to fill me in because Adam and I, we're not there yet. And so once we get, that's okay. Once we do, but let's go through the whole thing. And that's actually a really fun part of this, to make sure that you don't rush it. For us, all these picks, we're going to add a lot of really good players at a lot of positions. So I know quarterback gets a lot of the attention, and as it should. It's the story here and everywhere, but there's a lot of players, and the team has been set up in a good space, with a lot of picks for this year's draft. So that'll be one of the storylines, but it won't be the storyline.
There's a moment where there's good subterfuge, and then subterfuge is just pointless. And I don't know. I don't know when either there's a borderline that is crossed, or maybe it's just they're so used to that mindset when they're speaking with the media that they never get out of it. They're taking a QB. Now you can discuss back and forth the way KOC did. You can laud all of the QBs, and maybe there's a bit of secrecy there. But from Dan Quinn's standpoint, Sam Howell, they gave up on your guy. You loved him. It didn't work out in 2023.
Yeah.
I think he went to Seattle.
Correct.
Because Drew Lock is now a member of the Giants. They're taking a QB, right? So it's Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, or May, right? Isn't that the decision at hand for him?
It is, but I don't even think it's that close of a decision. Jaden Daniels' upside is the best quarterback in this class. If you can harness all the things that he does well, when you add in the athleticism, the mobility, the big arm, the big play potential, he's got the most highlights in any one quarterback in this draft, and maybe any one player in this draft. Jaden Daniels, I think there's a 90% chance that he's Washington's selection with number 2, and I understand why no coach, no GM is going to come out right now and tip their hand and say what they're going to do, but it seems to me like this thing's a done deal. And it's the right answer. Jaden Daniels is the guy. You're not going to get Caleb Williams, the Vikings. For the Vikings, they're not going to. The Bears aren't going to trade with the Vikings anyway. It's completely out. If you're going to pay, if you're going to mortgage the future for one quarterback in this draft, as Minnesota and Kwesi might, Jaden Daniels would be the guy I'd want to get. I just don't think the Commanders. I don't know that there's enough to give to make the Commanders pass on him, and because there's a big separation between Daniels and Drake May and JJ. So I think I don't see a scenario where Washington comes out of pick 2 and doesn't end up with Jaden Daniels.
Let me hit you with this. Now, these are quarterbacks that have already been drafted. You mentioned Chicago, Justin Fields, formerly with the Bears. Now he's in Pittsburgh. And here's Mike Tomlin talking about Russ being in pole position.
We're not resistant to competition, but as I've mentioned several times of late, I just think it's appropriate to establish positioning as we get into this thing. And the term that I've used is Russell has pole position. And why do I use that term? Because during this time where we're not formally working, man, I just think it's beneficial. His experience in the National Football League, his process that's been honed and perfected, talking about over a 12-month calendar, is not only good for him, it's good for teams. It's good for receivers, tight ends, running backs, etc. All the things that people that are really committed to winning do this time of year. Russell has those resources, man, that structure. And so that's why I say he has pole position, man. It just creates a synergy that I think is good for this time of year. When it's time to compete, we get in training camp-like settings and going to preseason stadiums and so forth. Obviously, Justin will be given an opportunity to show his capabilities.
So that's another interesting situation. PA and I had talked about this when the trade was first made. So they bring in Russ, super cheap deal, really a no-risk situation in a lot of ways if you're the Steelers. And George Payton's paying most of his salary in 2024. That's nice. And then you trade for Justin Fields, and it's kind of like when Ryan Poles, the Bears GM, says we're going to do right by Fields. In some ways, if you're Fields, you're taking an L here because now you're entering the last year of your deal. This was an opportunity wherever you go that you could earn that next contract. And now, as you hear from Tomlin, in the driver's seat or pole position at this point from a racing aspect is Russell Wilson. How do you see that? I just think that's kind of a unique and weird situation between those two, both new to that team, both vying for reps.
Fields apparently chose the Steelers as one of the destinations he wanted to go to or was willing to go to. And maybe he looks at Russell Wilson. You look at the last couple of years of Russell Wilson's career, and you could say, you know what, that guy's vulnerable. Steelers are going to, at some point, I think likely, give Justin a chance to go win games that Russell Wilson doesn't, unless Wilson plays a lot better than he has. So, there were a handful of teams that are more stuck at the quarterback position than the Steelers were when this trade went down, but not many. Did you want to be a Raider? Probably not. Maybe the Broncos could have been in play. I think there were a lot of teams that would have given up the, fifth rounder or sixth rounder? Justin Fields commanded. That was it. But I got to believe at some point this thing will turn into more of a competition. I guess, Mike Tomlin knows more about how to set up his depth chart and how you got to work Russell Wilson's ego in a certain way so that you don't end up upsetting him. When you brought him in, you told him that he was going to be the starter, I guess. So, maybe you do that. But I always find it weird that coaches are so anxious to get competition at every position. Let's push each other. Let's get competition at every position. But when the quarterback position comes up, it's like, whoa. No. We can't have competition here. We got to have a delineation. Our starter is Russell Wilson. Our backup is Justin Fields. Yeah, I always find that weird because you'd think these guys are hyper competitive, that guys that could have thrived on competition, but they never do it at the quarterback position.
What if they acquired Fields for the ham sandwich deal to move him draft week for teams who get shut out on quarterbacks?
Wow, that's brilliant.
And they'll get more.
I hadn't thought about that. They turned Fields into a fourth rounder on draft day.
Correct.
Oh. By the way, he could still be a Viking. So, okay, let's just play it out.
Yeah,
okay.
We have 30 seconds.
Vikings get shut out on 11 and 23 for a quarterback.
Yeah, it's not happening.
They don't pick again for 82 picks.
Yeah, not happening.
Now it's the fourth round.
Yeah.
You can trade for Justin Fields for a fourth rounder.
Mm-hmm. Not happening.
I'd do it in a second.
Yeah, I wouldn't, and it's not happening. Final segment, 9 to noon on the Feast after this.
I can't wait until tomorrow.
Great having you back, bud.
I missed you.
Aren't you excited? Are you inordinately excited about this NFL draft? Because we're both to a certain extent excited about it yearly. I'm really, really captivated by it this year
because a quarterback is in play.
Yeah,
the magnitude is just higher, and knowing that the team almost has to execute a trade makes it to get that quarterback adds drama that we didn't have last year. And so, there's just the intrigue from the Vikings standpoint.
Yeah,
very, very high. The fact that there are all of these seemingly really good quarterbacks and wide receivers. We're not even talking about the wide receiver position because it's not a position need for the Vikings.
Yeah.
Man, there's some talent in the offensive fantasy talent in this draft that I love. So the intrigue, the talent level, this is going to be a super fun draft.
Have a great Easter weekend, okay?
Thank you. You too.
Likewise for you, Nordo.
Thank you. You too.
And I'm Paul Allen. By the way, with that draft piece, I believe tickets for the draft party go on sale Monday at Vikings.com. Tickets for the draft sale, Viking draft party, a month from yesterday, so 3 Thursdays from now, U.S. Bank Stadium, Vikings.com this Monday. Everybody have a great Easter on Sunday and a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much for listening. Here comes Nordo to put the wrap on the show.
And thanks to Casey's for bringing you the 9 to noon show wraps. Pizza, get Casey's rewards, deals on food and fuel. Love you, Casey's. It's the Friday Feast. Charch is home from vacation. He's clearly still ailing from Kirk irritation. He's cruising the country, making wide turns with the fifth wheel, left arm on the sill, sunburn in the skin peels. Charch is becoming quite the trucker. Thoughts on Sam Darnold starting? Well, it makes him pucker. Thinks the Vikes might have to settle for pass rush like Jared Verse. If so, the draft party will need a supersized hearse. It's a curse of trading up for passers. Long history of L's. Back to the days of racing gassers. Hit a home run and we can own the division. Ask the Bills and Chiefs if they regret their decision. So this weekend, soak in the Easter holiday while dreaming of the Vikings getting Drake May. PA's on NC State tonight, so bet it all on Marquette. And with the Wolves and Wild and Twins games, take all you can get.
Faith and Gold.
Podcast today's Paul Allen Show, or listen back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.